Welcome, everyone. I'm Karen, and this is our community-supported agriculture think tank. Our main focus is in our restoration plan and in educating our towns and cities, our provinces, and the importance of growing their own food. And as well, we know that Canada grows less than 20% of our food. We export a lot as well. And as I mentioned today, I really want to focus on microgreens. Kimberly has definitely inspired me to start growing my own. And I know that Brian, you've been growing yours as well. And so I just thought this would be a really great topic. Many people are growing them in their kitchen for themselves or their family, and many are making it into a small side business. And I think as we step into spring, I think we're going to see a lot more of this happening, because I know I don't like buying my greens at the big box stores because they really are not organic. They spray them with crazy toxic chemicals. I'm definitely going to be growing my own. But if I wasn't, I'd be definitely supporting local mini green growers here in Calgary. And so I think it's just a great topic that we can step into. These tiny greens are cropping up everywhere lately. And of course, we know how powerful they are in regards to nutrition. Apparently, they have more vitamins and more minerals and antioxidants than the full-size counterpart. And Kimberly has really shown me how growing these microgreens can be quick and easy and convenient, regardless of the amount of experience that you have in gardening. And you can grow microgreens in your kitchen, your living room, no matter what size your space is. And you can grow ranging from different kinds of vegetables: arugula, chives, carrots, beets, cilantro, sunflower, kale, carrots, celery, etc. Right? And so I found this really great video by Kevin of Epic Gardening, and I do recommend his YouTube channel. He is amazing. He talks about many different topics, and he teaches us in this video how to grow these microgreens. It's about a 40-minute video, but I'm only going to play probably maybe 10 to 15 minutes of it, and then we can have a Q&A. I would love for Kimberly or Brian, whoever, to share, in regards to where you buy your seeds too. I think that's going to be important for us to know.
How's it going, everyone? Kevin from Epic Gardening here. Today, we are growing a powerful superfood called microgreens. Now, you may have heard of these before, or you may be familiar with growing sprouts, which are a close cousin to microgreens. But I think in today's video and the process that we're going to go through, we're just going to talk about very bare bones, as you can see, very minimal equipment way to grow a lot of nutritious greens at home. Now, I started gardening in an apartment and in a townhouse, places with almost no light at all. And, this is one of the things that you can grow no matter where you live. I mean, you can grow them if you have a big sprawling property, which I would be very jealous of. Even on my property now, I don't have a ton of space. But even if you're an apartment dweller, you can grow microgreens. So we have a bunch of different types here. But before we really get into the nitty-gritty of how we're going to do this, I'm going to clear up probably a few of the most common questions about microgreens in general. So the first question would be, are microgreen seeds different from normal seeds? And the answer is no. These are the same exact species, the same exact plants you would normally grow to their full size, except for the fact that we're planting them much more densely than you normally would. Let's say you're doing a broccoli green. There's no way you're going to be planting thousands of broccoli seeds right next to each other if you're going to grow them all the way up. But in a microgreen situation, you would, and that's because you're harvesting them very early on in their life cycle, maybe 8 to 11 days for broccoli. One of the longer ones would be basil, and even that's only 25 days. And we all know you can have basil that goes throughout an entire summer if you're growing it to maturity. So that is one of the most common questions. The second most common question is where to get seeds. And so I like to get mine from True Leaf Market or Everwild Farms. Anywhere you can buy a bulk seed is going to be a good idea, because if you buy, for example, we have some done peas right here. If you were to have bought those in seed packs, you'd be spending quite a bit of money to actually cover an entire tray. So without further ado, we're going to address the basic setup for how to grow microgreens, the soil, etc., and also some different techniques based on the type of seed, including soaking and including the density that you're going to plant those seeds. So the first thing to talk about is the soil medium. Now, I'm using a very standard potting mix here. It's very fine grained, although you can grow microgreens hydroponically if you want, or you can grow them in something like a coconut coir, which is an inert medium that doesn't provide a lot of nutrition, but it does have kind of the same textural qualities. Now, what you really want in your soil or whatever growing media you use is that it's fine grained. You do not want a lot of these large particles. And for that reason, buying something like garden soil or even some types of potting mix that have a lot of wood products in them aren't a good idea. And that's because when you're planting, the larger the particles, the harder it is for those roots to kind of get around. And that's why you just want to avoid that, because you want nice, even growth throughout the entire tray. You want to get as much as you can of these microgreens. So what I like to do is I take 2 cups of water, and this is unmoistened soil mix, and I'll put the water in first. And what that's going to do is that's going to help prevent any sort of mold issues, because all the water is going to wick upwards through the soil mix instead of downwards, top watering. And you can kind of get a lot of mold and fungal issues if you do that, in my experience. And I've also noticed that one of the biggest killers of new growers' microgreen trays is that fungal problem, getting that mold, that sort of spidery looking mold. And so what I'll do instead, as you're seeing me do here, is I will bottom water and then I will fill from the top. And then what we'll do with our spray bottle right over here is once we've sown our seeds, we can go ahead then and give it a light mist on the top. And that's really all it'll need until you get some germination going on these trays. Now, another little tip here is when you're growing your micros, you don't want to fill the soil all the way up to the brim, because if you do that, you're going to have some issues when it comes to harvesting. You know, you don't really need to wash microgreens when you harvest them, provided you don't have any mold issues and you know exactly how they grew. So the best way to prevent actually having to wash is recessing your soil just a little bit, you know, maybe a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch below the surface. And then when you come through with your scissors, as you're cutting, you're not cutting off any dirt with it, or you're not pulling up any roots. So that's what I like to do. And this is just about as much as I would put in here. And you can see it's just really nice, fine grained, not a lot of large particles. And I like to smooth it out. And if you want to, you can even come through with another tray and kind of give it just a quick little pat, just to lightly compress it. Don't go overboard here. And it will leave these little row patterns. And so you do want to re-smooth those out, because you don't want your seeds to clump, but just gives it that little bit of compression to help the seeds adhere to the soil once they actually start to germinate. So that's it for our soil. Now we're going to go into a more simple seed and talk about how to actually sow them. So here I have purple top white globe turnip seed, which is in the brassica family. And you can see the seeds are quite small. And so the smaller the seed, generally the less you'll need, because they cover pretty well. And so I've got about 1.5 ounces right here. And let's go ahead and sprinkle it on the surface. As you sprinkle your microgreen seeds, I like to start from corner to corner and kind of come through just like this and give it as even a distribution as possible. You don't need to go overboard and get really meticulous with it, but you just want to avoid large pockets and clumps of seed, which is why when we tamped the soil down, it was a good idea to smooth out those ridges. And that's why you want this soil to be as smooth as possible when you start it out. So you can see I'm just evenly distributing, just kind of scattering these. And oftentimes you'll miss the corners a little bit because you're afraid of spilling seeds, so you won't actually sow on the corners. So just come through, make sure that you exhaust all the seeds that you used, and you're going to be in a really good spot. This looks like a pretty even distribution for these turnips. And I could even save some of this. I may have gone a little over the 1.5 ounces, probably closer to 2. This looks like really good spacing to me, but I am going to go ahead and sprinkle the rest in here. And that's pretty much it for sowing a small seed like turnips. Now that we have our seeds sown, we do have a little bit of water coming up from the bottom of the tray, if you remember, but we have to give them a little water over the top, because that does start to trigger the germination process. So I like to give it a very light mist, there we go, of just normal water, nothing too fancy. Make sure I get adequate coverage. It also kind of helps to adhere the seed to the surface of the soil, where once those roots start to come out, they actually going to start to adhere themselves instead of growing in a weird pattern. So boom, we're just going to hit it with some water, not too crazy, but just enough to get the surface wet. about all we'll need. And then what I'll do in this phase, they don't need light. But remember, most of the time you're burying these seeds below the soil. If you're growing them in a normal gardening situation, we're not doing that here. And so what I like to do, and this does two things. First of all, putting a tray on top like this is going to block out light, which some seeds do prefer darkness in order to germinate. In fact, I would say most seeds prefer a bit of darkness to germinate. But it's also going to provide a little bit of pressure that's going to simulate it being buried underneath the soil. Because remember, we just sowed these on the surface there. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, what you have to do is just sit back and wait. Every day or two, you can kind of check. Usually for something like turnips in particular, this is going to take about 3 days to start germinating, those roots to start going down. And then what you'll see is these start to push up. And so the tray actually will sort of rise on its own. And then what you'll see is some yellowy looking leaves. And they're yellow because they don't have any ability to photosynthesize yet because they have not been exposed to light. And that's completely normal. Don't think that your microgreens are unhealthy because of that. So we're going to leave this one alone, and we're going to tackle a couple of these other seeds that have some more interesting sowing and spacing and germination requirements. One type of seed that is really popular to grow as a microgreen or even for juicing is wheatgrass, one of the most popular ones you see at juicing stores all over the place. And as you can see, if we take a look at this seed here, I'll see if I can bring it close for you. You can take a look at that seed, and it's much larger, and also it's a bit more hard. The seed coat is a bit harder. And so on the instructions on this packet and just through my own experience, I know that you do want to soak this seed in order to improve germination rates before you put it into the trays like you just saw us do with those purple top globe turnips. And so on the back here, it says soak for 8 to 12 hours, rinse and drain, then place in a bowl or sprouting container. What I'll do is I will place in the tray that we're growing our microgreens in, or in this case, our wheatgrass seeds. So in this case, what I like to do with my microgreens, if I know I'm growing a lot of different soaking style types, is I'll create a couple different bowls, fill them with water, and I'll dump these in the bowl, and then I'll set various timers so I know, when that period is done, because you don't want to soak them too long. Otherwise, too much water gets in, and in fact, they can actually drown in the water. They can sort of start to rot and drown. It's not what you want. You just want to get a little bit of water through the seed hull to start speeding up that germination process instead of just surface sowing these wheat seeds right on top without soaking them. You'll get spotty germination, or the soil will have to be really wet in order to make that work, which also has its own issues. You got that mold problem that I was talking about. So we're going to go ahead and soak these as well as some other varieties, and we'll get right back to planting. As I mentioned, our first one going in will be our wheatgrass. So we can just dump that in there. And in fact, I'm going to use the rest of this because I'm going to sow it pretty heavily. So we're going to do all 8 ounces, which I'll need to fill a little bit more water in there. No problem though. Next, we have done peas. Peas are a fantastic and actually quite valuable if you were to sell these at a market, and also quite nutritious and delicious microgreen. So done peas, you can tell, are much smaller than they end up once they're soaked, and it's about 5 to 8 ounces per tray. So what I like to do is I'll just measure out 4 ounces really quickly here. We'll do that, and we'll do another 4 because I'll sow these pretty heavy as well. There we go. These soak for about 6 to 8 hours, maybe even up to 8 to 12. These soak for 4. And then we also have our final soaker of the mix that we're going to be growing in this demonstration is our sunflower seeds. So that will be right here. So these are black oil sunflower seeds. Those are the best ones for microgreens. They have a bit of a different look to them. There's hundreds and hundreds of different types of sunflower seeds. So you can see these are all black. They're not speckled. They don't have any white streaks. I'm going to use about 8 ounces of these as well. These soak for about 4 hours. And on these, the colder the water, the better. I'm just using water out of my filter, so it's a little bit chilled. So it'll be just fine. And we're going to do 8 ounces of these just because I want to make sure I have some extra. No big deal if you have extra. You can always just start another tray up. So we've got our things soaking. I'm going to make sure and depress these down, make sure they all get submerged. Nice and good. And we will be back when we go ahead and have these all soaked so we can sow them. As you can see, we've got quite a few things soaking here. We've got our sunflowers, our peas, our wheatgrass, and actually one bonus one that I just added, nasturtium. Nasturtium, an exceptionally delicious and prized vegetable for chefs. I mean, you can go to a restaurant and sell those, and it's quite valuable, but also for yourself, nutrition wise, very, very advantageous to be eating those. So we've got our 2 cups of water. This here is something I'd recommend just as a base layer, you know, for your microgreens and for your nutrition. This is just a simple salad mix. I think it's extremely valuable to have that in your repertoire. You can get a basic mix. You can get a more spicy mix that's a little bit more forward with those mustards and those arugulas. But in general, I really do like to have a basic salad mix ready at any time, because remember, you go to the store and you buy, I don't know, 1 head of lettuce, or certainly if you were to buy microgreens, the price is out the roof. And as you can see, we're not spending a whole lot on the production of these microgreens. Your soil's not that expensive, especially if you buy in bulk. Your seeds, certainly for these cheaper seeds, aren't that expensive, right? Lettuce produces a ton of seeds per plant. That's why the seed price itself is relatively cheap. I think the basic mix is maybe, if you start buying these in the pound increments, you can get these for $8 for a pound of seed, which is more than enough for 16 trays worth, which is much more than you're going to want to consume in a week, certainly. And honestly, that'll feed you for a month or more. And so we're talking $8 plus some of the cost of the soil for quite a bit of food for quite a long time. So we're just prepping the seeds here. And, you know, figured I would go over a couple other questions about microgreens that I often get. And so one thing that a lot of people ask is, does it matter if the soil is organic, or does it matter if the seeds are organic? Now, certainly that's a much deeper question than I think is applicable to just a microgreen scenario. I mean, the question of organic versus conventional is a very hotly debated and hotly contested one. I find for myself, if I can, I will. But I have to remember that if I could also grow these in a hydroponic environment where I'm just growing them on like a coconut coir mat, that's technically not organic certified. However, in my worldview of how I think about how that plant actually grows and the nutrition that's entering my body, then certainly I would view that as an organic product, just because I know exactly what I did to that plant. And so I would just caution you to pay attention to the fact that organic certification is very different from the method in which a plant is grown. You know, in organic produce, you can still use pesticides, you can still use fertilizers, and you can still use fungicides, herbicides, right? They just have to be natural and not synthetic. So, you know, sometimes I think people will make a differentiation or a false dichotomy between something that's natural being good and something that's synthetic being bad, right? Arsenic, completely natural, naturally occurring compound, but you don't want to eat it. And penicillin, certainly something that did not occur in nature, or certainly not in large amounts, or had to be discovered. And it is completely a lifesaver for many people on this planet. So just a thing to think about. But we're going to go ahead and sow these basic lettuce salad mix. So we've got some arugula in here, we got some romaines, we have some normal leaf lettuces, and I think we do have a little bit of a spicy flair with some of those mustards and mizunas, which is just a tasty mix. I mean, this is really cool because you're growing what you would buy at the store, you know, a chopped up mix of things. Just get different seeds in the same packet and you're really good to go. So same principles apply here, nothing too fancy. We're just sprinkling nice and even. And that's going to be it for the planting section of this presentation. We're going to go into the blackout dome period, or the germination period of these plants, in just a sec. And so I hope you'll join me there. As I miss this off and cover it up, we are going to move on. So here we are in the garden shed. As you can see, a vast array of microgreens are sitting in here waiting to germinate. These are all the ones that we've planted up. We've got all the way from salad mix to chives to turnips to some of the ones that we've soaked, our wheatgrass, our nasturtiums, our sunflowers, and our peas. Now, you might be wondering, why aren't the lights on? Well, the plants don't really need light yet. Remember, they're germinating, they're starting their life. Almost no seeds, at least certainly not these ones, need light in order to germinate. And so we're going to cover them up. You can see we've got these trays on top, like I mentioned in the prior sections of this presentation, but we also have a couple trays on top. Now, why would you do that? Well, what I've seen from my friends who are commercial microgreen farmers at large scales now is putting a little bit of added weight on top of the tray forces those seeds to struggle a little bit more, get really well established, and grow up nice and healthy and strong. And so when you start to see these pop up, then you'll know, okay, it's time to take the tray off and analyze and say, do we need to expose it to light? So what we're going to do is patiently wait for a few days. I may check in once or twice over the course of the germination process, but really now it's a waiting game. As long as you set all these trays up correctly, the right soil, the right amount of water, the right soaking or non-soaking, depending on the type of seed, and the right distribution of seeds, then you should be in a good spot to just cross your fingers, wait, and hope you have a good germination in these trays. So we'll be back in a couple days. Okay, it has been a
Well, I'm excited. I know that video is amazing, and I recommend you watch the right to the end. And I will include the link here in the chat for those of you who are interested in starting your microgreen operation in your kitchen for maybe just yourself or your family. And I know there's a few of you that are already involved in microgreening, and I would love for you experts to share your expertise. Tanis.
Okay, well, I'm not the expert, so I just have a question. I did actually buy like microgreen trays in the fall, just in case, like pre-prepared kind of stuff or whatever, in case we couldn't get in to grocery stores to get some fresh produce. But it was a really great video. That's a great find. He actually talked about some good stuff. I'd love to learn more about the hydroponic style, though. I wonder if he does any of those videos, but I can always take a look. Anyways, I was just wondering about the water process too, because I have distilled water here, but I also can get some like filtered water too, I suppose. But maybe that's the question I have for the experts on the panel here today, if they know anything about like the whole water thing, because distilled doesn't have the minerals, but I don't know if that's really, important or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanis. Great question. Lizette?
Yeah, all your minerals are actually right in the nutrients of the seeds. So clean water, preferably not chlorinated. If you have chlorinated water, just draw a bucket and then let it air for 24 hours, and then you can water your seeds with that. But basically, the seeds have everything that they need. You don't need any minerals in your water.
That is great to know. Thank you for that. Thank you, Tanis. That's a great question. Brian, how's your operation coming along?
I thought you'd never ask. So I got a little bit prepared while you were playing that video, which I've already seen. I just wanted to give a quick rundown because my, let's say, operation is based on as cheap as possible. Now, I built these shelves. I got them at Princess Auto, I think $35 each. So that were two of them there is $75. You see that foil in the background? That is basically an emergency sleeping bag.
Oh, very good.
That's unfolded. And that costs $4. So that just gives it more light when you turn on your lights. I got these lights at Amazon. Grow lights, I think they were, I can't even remember. I'm cheap as hell. I got these are stainless steel trays. Now you can grow them into plastic, but as soon as I seen stainless steel, I thought it'd be a better place to grow than on plastic. And I don't use soil. I use paper towel.
Yes, yes.
Cut to fit. And then I'll use 2 layers. And then I will throw my seeds on there, make sure they're all nice and even. Now, when I'm doing my seeds too, that guy was using just a little glass, shaking them around. I've got spice bottles that have little seed holes, and I've got different sizes for bigger seeds too. And then I'll use those to shake it around like a salt shaker. And then basically a spray bottle. This is full of chemicals, hydrogen and oxygen. And just spray them all down, get them nice and wet. And for the, like he is saying, for the first couple of days, you want to keep them covered and let them germinate. And then once you keep them covered, you probably don't even have to look at them again, because that holds the moisture in there if you give it enough water. And then when you take the lid off, you want to water them right again. And I just spray them. Hit every area where the paper towel is. And you just keep them moist. In about 10 days, you got something you can use in your soups. And I love them on my soups and sandwiches and all sorts of different things. And you wind up making, for me, because I'm single, making so much that I don't use them all, but I'll use them in as much as I can, because, you know, they're basically free. Another little presentation, he's talking about buying seeds in bulk. We got black-eyed peas. We got fennel. These are not small bags. We got, mung beans, green peas, yellow peas, sunflower seeds. I got so much I can't even remember, but I buy so much so that I'm ready for the worst. And then if we never do have to have this, I still do. If we do, I'm well prepared. With that, I yield.
Where do you buy your seeds from?
The real Canadian wholesaler, I just buy them. It's basically bulk foods. I'm not buying them from a seed store.
Mhm.
I'm buying them from a food store. These are basically beans and seeds that they sell for food. And they're quite reasonably priced. And you're buying them in bulk, they're quite cheap.
Can you show us one of your trays? They look.
I could, but I don't even have anything going right now. I just kind of finished it off the other day, and I got to
Okay.
start something new today. I was so disappointed when you said that's what you were talking about. I was like, damn, I got to start a new batch.
Well, when you have a new batch, I would love for you to introduce us to your babies.
Yes, I'm always happy to do that.
Thank you, Brian. It was great. I love it. Yeah, I just actually saw a video this morning that I was going to showcase, and it's I can't remember the name of the YouTube channel, but it's a father and a son, and it's lovely because he's introducing the whole growing operation of microgreens to children, and how it's just great for parents and kids to get involved in doing this. And so he does share the other option of no soil and just using the paper towel like you're using. That's great.
Just more convenient for mess and clean up and tidy in your house. If you're going to be, you know, if you want to use soil, I just see that as being a lot of nuisance and a mess.
And so you're just layering like one layer of paper towel, and then you're moistening the paper towel and then laying the seeds over top?
2 layers of paper towel.
Okay.
And then the paper towel, you moisten that, and it is like a wick. So as long as there's enough water there, the entire surface will hold water. If you just watered one corner, the paper towel will pull the moisture into the whole surface, like a wick.
Thank you, Brian.
And coconut mat can, be reused? I'm not sure. That's another thing, that there's a whole bunch of different mats like that, yeah, I don't think you can reuse them. And then that's inconvenience. You can get, it's called rock salt insulation is another medium that I think would rather be cheap, and you can use that. But on convenience and ease and cheap, paper towel seems to do fine. There's some studies, and I've watched these guys, they do these studies on the effects of with the mats and the dirt and the paper towel, what the results were. And the difference was minimal. Wasn't a huge difference.
Mhm.
Some of them, the chemicals were making differences because they're using like fertilizers and stuff.
And where did you buy your trays from?
I got them, it's a new store. There's only 2 in Edmonton. It's called Wholesale Liquidators. And it's a new bargain store, and it's just a big warehouse full. I think they're buying revenue or supplies from whatever suppliers that have failed. So like these trays, I picked them up. They're real cheap. I think I got about 6 for $20. Stainless steel trays.
Thank you, Brian. Karen, did you have a question, or did Brian just answer it?
Yeah, I just thought they looked like cookie baking sheets. Is that kind of what they are?
Well, they're not. They are, it said right on them, stainless steel trays. And it looks like there would be something like a platter that you would serve hors d'oeuvres on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Yes.
Thank you, Karen. I have a question for Brian as well. It seems like you have so many different kinds of seeds and in large quantities too. Do you take any special measures to lengthen the life of unused seed? Because I've looked into, online, like some people talk about, putting them in sealed jar with the desiccants or like oxygen absorbers, and there are debates on whether seeds are alive and they need oxygen to survive and all that, and the temperature is like a big debate out there. But do you do anything special based on your own experience? Thank you.
There is another option that you like. I've got these, what do you call them? Sealers, where you got a screw-on lid and there's a little cap that you can take off. And what you can do, and you can grow them right in these sealer jars, is there's a little cap, take that out, put a screen in, then you can fill it with water. Like he said, you can soak it for, say, 8 to 10 hours so that the seed component breaks down. Then you drain it, and then you just re-water it and drain it, and then that screen is going to give it oxygen.
But is that how you store seeds long term?
No, seeds long term, I don't think you have to worry about that. You'd use them up before they go bad.
Thank you.
And then I gotta let everybody know too here, I'm in the beginning stages of all of this. I'm kind of learning as I go here. There's a tray here that I filled the bottom of the tray full of seeds, and there was so many seeds on there, I could have done 3 trays, but I'm just learning as I go. And we'll figure this out. And it doesn't really matter because it's quite inexpensive. So if you waste some, it's not a real big burden.
You have some more questions in the chat. How often do you need to water a paper towel?
I used to do it every day. And you'll get a feel for it when you just want to make sure that there's constantly moisture on there. You don't want to drown it. To put water, because like the guy in the video said, you can get mold, and I've had a little bit of that too. And sometimes I'm lazy and I don't water it for a day, and then I give it twice as much water. That's not a good idea. You got to try and water it every day. And it's usually just with a spray bottle. Give it a quick, good, heavy spray.
Thank you so much, Brian. Kimberly, what did you grow that we had for dinner last night? It was so delicious.
Oh, we had broccoli, onions, and Swiss chard. Yeah, I'll show you if you want to see my setup.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you see there's little white parts here, but some of this is root hairs. So there is a little bit of a difference between mold and the other. And what's great about these lights in this little system is it's no more electrical, that's being used other than what you would charge your cell phone with. So that's kind of cool too. But yeah, I have cauliflower, broccoli, beets, all these different ones. So I have the nasturtiums. I like all the different unique ones. I can't just pick some of the basic, unfortunately. But I mean, I have all the others too, right? Like alfalfa is really good, and cilantro. You know, cilantro is a heavy metal chelator, so it's a really fantastic one to have. You know, in your mix too.
And where do
So
you get
I'll,
them
I got mine from some of them from the States. I found it hard to find some of the, like I wanted to get some of the, like I said, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and I just don't find the same, I don't find them as easily in Canada, but I'm sure that they are there. I just have to look around a little bit more. But I found a company, it's called True Market, I believe. Um, yeah, sorry, True Leaf Market is the one that I bought a bunch of microgreens from. And just while I have a moment here, also up and coming will be winter sowing, which is really exciting too, which everybody will start to put their little milk jugs out with their seeds. And I did it last year for the first time and had about 90% success. So that may be something everybody wants to look into to get your garden or things moving forward. It's a really fantastic technique. And with that, I yield.
So when do you start doing that?
Well, some people start in January, some people start in February, and you know, you can even start as much, you know, even in March, really. So it's just having these little your either milk jugs or vinegar containers or juice containers. So if you guys have anything like that, I use a little glue gun to put holes in the bottom and the top. You know, you cut them in half, you open them up, put your soil in about 4 inches, sprinkle your seeds and tape them back up. And then you just need to make sure that they don't dry out. That's the main thing, but you're not meant to baby them other than, you know, ensuring that they have water. It's called winter sowing. Yeah. So that's up and coming. And like I said, I had about 90% success last year, which was fantastic. I didn't do very many root vegetables because they're pretty good to go in directly in the ground, but
Definitely a great topic for us in the very near future.
yeah. Well, and I can send you some other stuff too if you're
Yeah.
interested. But it's just another thought for, you know, getting a little bit ahead of the season because
Yeah.
you know and when those plants came out, they were so strong. Like I had cosmos that were almost 5 feet tall, and their stems were like over the size of a toonie. Like they were bar none to any plant that I've ever had previously.
Amazing. Well, maybe you can showcase next week.
Yeah, okay.
Amazing. Yeah.
Okay, but yes, I mean, I think microgreens is just fantastic too, because like I said, high nutrient levels, and you know, you can have something in, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days, and then also longer too, depending on what you're growing.
There is an aspect to this too. Like most of these are one harvest. Once you cut them, the clippings, you're done. But the guy in the video, he is doing wheatgrass, and you can harvest that multiple times, 2 or 3, 4 times maybe, because it'll keep growing like grass.
Right. Do you grow wheatgrass?
I don't. I haven't found it.
I think it's really important as we move forward to start growing our own food, as everyone has mentioned here, because we just don't know. We don't know what's happening in the near future, and I think it's just really important for us to be self-sustainable. Tanis, go ahead.
Brian just didn't answer my couple questions about what he did with his yield, because when you have that many, when you have that much product, and say like there's only my husband and I, for instance, like of course I would probably do it on a smaller scale than you, Brian. But honestly, what did you do with your yield? Because like that would be important to me, because I don't like to waste. Thank you.
Oh, of course, we don't like to waste, and I completely understand that. But there's going to be, I'm finding I'm wasting, and then I want to take my waste. I'm going to put it into a compost pile, And then that'll be nutrients into the soil that'll, say, in my raised beds that I have in my backyard. That'll be probably this summer, I'll get more indulgent with my raised beds. And I've got composters, and just throw them into a composter, and that'll get the nutrients back into the soil, and that nutrient goes into your growth for next year. And it's so inexpensive that if you waste some, it's okay. I don't think you're going to be burdened by it. The fact that you are prepared far beyond what you need, like this is for me, I'm far beyond what I need. It gives you just peace of mind, and whatever you waste, it's really of no consequence, and it will go into my compost pile.
Lizette said you could give it to your neighbors. You'd be very popular.
Well, I haven't really got, let's say, this down to an art perfect or anything. And if I'm going to do something like that, and I have thought about it, but yeah, we'll see. In time, this might develop. I'm in it to save money, and I'm in it to take care of myself. It's not a matter of really making money. If anything, this would be something that I could, if you want it, here, take some.
Exactly. Beautiful. Love your heart. Kimberly.
I give some of it to my worms. So I have a worm farm that is new to me, and boy, oh boy, is it giving me a run for my money with these little gnats. But then also I'm using that soil, not always, like I'm not using it constantly in my trays, but I of course am not getting rid of the soil. We'll use it outside, right? In my plants or again into my winter sowing. So if the few little sprouts or whatever get in there, I don't feel so bad about it either. But I think you'd be hard pressed to think that you would have too much to eat, because for myself, it goes quite quickly. And with that, I yield.
And for me, I don't get a lot of, say, produce in my diet, and anything I buy, I put it in my fridge. Some of it goes to waste regardless. I'm just a meat and potatoes kind of guy, but I want to have this at my disposal. So with this, it's easy and it's there. If I put the effort in to grow it, the effort is going to be put in to eat it.
I love that you've taken this on for yourself. It's such a great idea. Thank you. And yeah, Kimberly has hers right on her kitchen counter. So we can grow microgreens anywhere in our house. I love that idea.
Well, you can see mine.
Yeah, it's so great. I love it.
I'd love to get any input from anybody on any suggestions regarding this. Like I said, I'm kind of just getting my feet wet in this. And if you got any helpful hints, I'm all ears.
Tanya, is there anything different that you're doing?
I actually bought a light table from West Coast Seeds, and I'm learning some things as I go, just like as you guys have said. And in fact, I just was at a gathering the other day and talking to somebody who's doing it commercially, and she was explaining how she does it with the weighting the seeds before they germinate, because I didn't know, because I always wondered how do they get them so perfectly germinated, because I find mine don't germinate equally. So the peas I manage to usually get a couple crops of, like I cut them off and then I just leave them because while I'm waiting for other stuff to grow. I'm still figuring it out. The light table that I have has got this pad that you're supposed to water from below, but I found I was getting mold by doing that, because you leave it, in order to have enough water around it, it was just too much water. So now I've gone back to just spritzing them to get them to germinate, and then I just pour water on them just normally. But like I said, I'm just still learning. It is a learning curve, but I'd like to be doing it more efficiently. I do get my seeds from West Coast Seeds, so I think they're quite pricey. This this person I was talking to last week says she gets hers from Mums, and it's actually MUMMS. They're in Saskatchewan apparently, because she says they're much more economical than places like West Coast, which more specialized in garden seeds, but they do have the microgreen seeds and sprouting seeds. So yeah, still learning.
Thank you.
And one thing I would like to share, and I think Kimberly just touched on it, is some of the roots are so fine hairs that it looks like mold. Now, you'll know the difference between mold and these hairs when you see them. So that'll be something you have to learn about too, because sometimes you think that's mold, but it isn't. It's just hair-like roots.
Thank you, Brian. Tanya, what was the seed company? Is it Mums, you said? MUMMS?
Yeah, I haven't actually checked them out yet, but I know I've gotten sprouting seeds from them before. I think that was more their claim to fame, but it moved because sprouting and microgreens aren't really the same thing, right?
Right.
So, but I don't know if the seeds are any different. Like the guy in the video said that it's the same kind of seeds that you could grow into a full-on plant. I think there's some differences maybe in the sprouting seeds, but I'm not sure. The other thing I always think about is, will we ever run out of these seeds? Because seeds are pretty valuable and we're never growing the plant to the point of getting more seeds.
Right.
Really, if you grow the plant to its full maturity, then you can save seeds that you can continue to grow with. Whereas the microgreens are great as far as they go, but you can't really ever create your own seeds. So that's one thing I think about, being the overthinker that I am.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Because I don't know whether we have an endless, like right now, I mean, some things like what Brian's using, beans and that, they're pretty cheap to grow and lots of people grow them. And as they push for more vegan lifestyles, there tends to be, not that that's the best answer, but there tends to be a lot of that kind of thing out there. But they do take up a lot of space. They're not an expensive crop. So I don't think that there's a huge motivation for farmers to grow them. At least in this country, I think where they're more a traditional food, I think, is where a lot of them, like mung beans, I think we import them from places like India and whatnot. So I think that's just something just to be aware of for me and to maybe dig into at some point where these seeds come from.
I agree, Tanya.
Yeah.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that. Lizette, you are definitely welcome to share your growing operation.
So this is my growing room here. I'm actually in the business of doing marketing and sales for growing structures. This is actually a grow wall.
Wow.
I grow my own lettuce, but we only need, we have a special light, this one here. And it actually emits special frequencies that the plants like. So we only put one seed in and then we harvest every week. We harvest the outer leaves and then they grow back. So I just harvested this a couple days ago, the outer leaves, and they're coming back already. If you can see that or not.
Yes, we can.
These are my microgreens here. I use a short tray because this is watercress, and they'll be easier to cut underneath. I use a knife, by the way, a sharp knife. And then these are my sunflowers down here. They're in dark out right now. So can you see that?
Yes, that's great.
So tomorrow I'll probably put them underneath the light. And then again, these are special lights that we use. We run them 24/7. They're about 80 watts, so very low voltage. And I'm not selling, but I'm giving them to the neighbors. So we're making a lot of friends.
That's so great.
But yeah, these are kind of special lights. You might be able to see it in there. There's a little green light.
Right.
And the green is actually a chipset that is in the light spectrum that we can't see, like an infrared. And this actually helps with bone repair. So that's what it was originally developed for, but the plants really like it. So it actually opens up the channels so that they can grow faster. So sunlight's great, but it's not always consistent. And being able to use something like this allows you to grow a lot faster, about 25% faster, and produces organic. But Brian, I really like what you did. You're on the right track there, man. Everybody should be growing them. If you don't have a light, you can still do them by your window or a T5 light or something like that. That's my story.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a great setup there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Liz, you do.
so we actually do growing structures, agro tunnels, and I've talked to some other members from other groups about setting up growing agro tunnels in other communities. In a 1,000 square foot tunnel, we can actually grow the equivalent of 2 acres of food every month, 24/7, and that'll feed about 500 people. With the combination of the different technologies like the lights, the aeroponic growing walls, and we use biodigesters to input CO2 into the growing rooms, we can actually reharvest our plants at least twice a month on an ongoing basis. Just from one single seed, we can actually harvest from the same plant multiple times. So it's kind of in the specialty of the lights, but also controlling the environment is really key.
Thank you, Lizette. I would love for you to do an episode in the near future on exactly that.
Be my pleasure.
Thank you. Tanit.
Yeah, I just would love to know, Lizette, what lights, what is the light tray things or whatever that you have there with all the multi-colors there? Where did you buy it and what is it called, please?
Okay, so that one's actually called a LED storm light, and it's made in the US. They're quite expensive. They're like $800 retail. The company that I work with, Food Security Structures Canada, we've just got them manufacturing in Canada right now, and we got them down to $200 a piece. I know that sounds like a lot, but like on the grow wall I have there, that's a 40 port wall. You could probably get away with one light tube, but we're, as I said, continually harvesting on the same plant. Instead of growing a plant all the way to a full head, which takes a lot of resources, we just trim the outer leaves so you're getting the most nutritive value from those leaves. And then the light allows the plant to regenerate and just keep on growing. So we have some plants been growing for like a full year on one seed. So I know the other lady was talking about issue with seeds. In this type of growing, we can actually grow on very little seeds and just multiple harvests.
That's brilliant. And Lizette, whereabouts do you live? Where are you?
I'm outside of Kingston. I'm on Amherst Island, the first island of the 1,000 islands.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for being here.
Put my email in here, okay?
Yes, thank you.
That grow wall that's basically hydroponic, right?
No, it's aeroponics.
Oh,
So aeroponics, aeroponics are different. So you've got hydroponics growing in water, and hydroponics is very efficient. It's 90% less water than ground-based, but aeroponics is 90%, aeroponics, AER, is 90% less than hydroponics in water, okay? So we have like a little 3-gallon trough at the bottom of this, and it recirculates only 5 times a day. That's it. So it's 24 volt, very, very low energy inputs. The light, again, is only 90 watts, so it doesn't draw much energy as well. And then what happens is the water pumps up and then trickles. There's inside the wall, there are little ports that the water trickles down, so it hits every little pot on the inside. And then it airs out. So you need oxygen at the roots as well. And that allows the plant's roots to dry out a little bit, and then it trickles and I don't know, it works, right? You put the nutrients in there and you check your pH. And I'm not a master gardener, believe me. I'm like you, Brian, just trial and error. I know as much as I do because I work with a company that this is what our goal is to actually address food insecurity throughout the whole country. And we started with the mandate of trying to support Indigenous remote communities. But then when COVID hit, it was like, that's just not, That's not remote communities, it's everywhere.
Mhm.
So we're on a mission to spread the word, and was somebody with another assembly up in the Ottawa area that had connected with me and told me about your think tank. So I've signed up, but I don't know too much about Life Force. I'm just taking a little bit at a time. I've got my hands full. I got my own mission, and it's just to help get more people eating food, good food, right? So microgreens is a great way to start.
Wonderful, Lizette. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I do recommend that if you haven't yet, to join lifeforcecanada.ca, the actual website. And
Yeah.
there's a video on there. And one of our pillars is definitely agriculture. And this is why it's so important for all of us, as you mentioned, right, to start growing our own food. And so, yeah, eventually what this think tank is going to be is where all of the provincial councils are stepping in and creating the agriculture committee. So the lead from those agriculture committees will be on these think tanks, on this think tank. And that's where we're going to be sharing what's happening within every province or county, what we're stepping into, what's working for one province, because if someone's doing it over here, someone in this province over here might not know. So we want to make sure that we're all on the same page and up leveling and upgrading to making sure that every sovereign, is eating great food,
Absolutely.
great healthy food.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you, Lizette. Tanya.
More question for Lizette, actually. Couple of things. And first, a comment. The aeroponics concept is something that they use in these tower gardens, that if anybody's familiar with the Juice Plus tower gardens.
Yep.
But I'm wondering, I know they have, in addition to water, like there's still water involved and electricity to pump the water through the system. There's also two nutrient mixes you also have to buy to add to them. So do you use some kind of a nutrient mix in your?
Yes, you have to.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah. So, when you're doing microgreens, it's not so much about nutrients, because everything that the plant needs is right in that seed. And it's those first couple of weeks that you get the most powerful benefits of those plants, as our speaker I'm sorry, Karen mentioned right at the very beginning. They're packed with so much nutrition we don't need to worry about adding any nutrients. But when you start growing leafy greens or vegetables, etc., they'll get to a certain stage. They have to have the nutrients or they won't continue to grow. And so it doesn't take very much to get it in there, but you do have to learn a little bit of chemistry. And I don't mean it like heavy chemistry. It's just, having a couple meters that you can read what your pH is and what your nutrient levels are.
Okay.
And then once you get the hang of that, then you're kind of on your own. It doesn't require a lot of maintenance at all. I just come down daily, add some extra water, check the nutrients, and then that's it.
Do you make your own nutrient mix, or do you buy some? No, okay, you buy it from somewhere. And then do you have a website that the company that you're working for does this?
Food Security Structures Canada. I just put it there. If you go under contact, you can see my picture. I work with the founders, Kim and Greg. Great people. I've known them now for close to 4 years, and they're just real genuine. They really have been working hard to find the best growing equipment, indoor growing equipment possible. So, this might look like something at Home Depot or Lowe's, but I can tell you they're nothing like it at all. We have a test farm in Pennsylvania, and they've been using these growing walls and lights for over 4 years. So we actually have yield calculators. We know that anybody that grows on this, we can tell you exactly how much it costs, how much harvest you would have, et cetera. So we are working with entrepreneurs and farmers that want to get into vertical farming. We're also trying to initiate social enterprise causes for growing food to feed people at food banks and community kitchens and stuff like that. And microgreens is like the super best way to do that. We have a system you can grow 18 trays a week, and we proved that concept already in the GTA area, that they're looking to create a whole system that they can roll out across the province, that any not-for-profit or community garden group could go in and on a volunteer basis, learn how to use our growing systems and feed everybody in the community. That's how we have to get it out there. That's how I see it. I mean, there's many ways, of course, but
Well,
But,
that's what
yeah,
this
but-
group is all about.
absolutely. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can't be left so vulnerable as we are with
No.
supply chain issues. There's no reason why we should have to import all the food that we do.
Well,
Was
it's
that-
keeps the economy going, but it's not a good way. It's not an efficient way to do things. Certain people are making a lot of money and a whole lot of people are not getting anywhere or aren't getting what they need.
Well, yeah, and you've got big growers, and I'm not knocking them. They have a place in the market where it's like a $25 million investment, and that just can't happen for a lot of communities.
Yeah.
We're in the range of about 300,000 to 400,000 for an agro tunnel and growing equipment. And there are some community groups, Indigenous communities in particular, can access funding upwards of 90%. They just don't know about us or what we're doing. And I mean, this is a perfect setup for cooperatives or small communities. Even people just want to start with a wall to feed, people in their neighborhood. I mean, we're talking micro business like microgreens, right? You don't have to have a huge investment, for probably like one of our big walls, 720 ports. That's a lot of food, 720 ports. It's
Mhm.
going to feed about 40 people. And you put a number of those in an agro tunnel, and you're feeding 500-600 people every month, all year round.
Mhm.
But what we're doing is something that's completely different. We're not trying to be a big player. We're trying to support every little community to be self-reliant, right? Much like Life Force is trying to establish another form of supply and more, of course.
This is amazing. These are the type of projects that our councils are definitely wanted to fund in the future. So bravo, I love this. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, well, I had met a guy named Jeff from Toronto. He'd called and vetted me, and then he told me about this. So I've just been watching the emails, but I'm happy to come back and do like a full
Yes.
presentation for you guys if that's of interest, because people need to know how to do this, right?
Yes.
Bigger plants, we can grow tomatoes. We can grow the small vegetables like cherry tomatoes, like the minis, right? So mini cucumbers. We've proven that we can grow strawberries. We can grow in bins. So bins aren't practical in warmer climates, but in the far north where you can't grow potatoes, but they cost, $30 for a couple pounds. Yes, grow bins are more practical. We're doing things like ginger, and we're growing things like turmeric, but any kind of herbs, we can grow lots of herbs. It's dwarf lemons, apple trees inside of our agro tunnels, because the agro tunnels are grown. They're actually a structure you put on a concrete pad, and then we take local earth and berm it over, and then that creates a controlled environment. So instead of trying to grow in a greenhouse, which in our climate makes no sense whatsoever, all these big companies that are doing that right now are losing money like crazy, because they're either having to vent the heat out from the lights, or they're having to cool it down because it's too hot. And they're growing vertically, so you've got different microclimates within the one structure. It's really not very practical. So with our structures, they're only 11 feet high, and the structure inside is rounded, so you don't get heat buildup in areas. You can literally run it off a $5,000 HVAC system, right? Because the temperature is already maintained at 55 degrees. So all of our systems can run off the grid with wind turbine or solar. It's meant to be like that. They're meant to be super easy, like a plug and play kind of thing. The greatest skill is in learning how to grow, and we provide support for that too.
I love it, Lizette. Thank you. Tennis.
Don't need to take everything over here.
Oh,
Just let me
it's all
know.
good. I love it. This is what this is all about.
Yeah.
No, please don't apologize, Lizette.
Okay.
This is amazing, seriously.
Yeah.
Do you your company that you're a part of there, the what is it called?
Food
The
security.
food security. Yeah. Now, do you guys have contacts or, people in each province that could help with setups and stuff like that? Because I live in Alberta, And
Mhm.
I have pretty big plans for our small community about growing, having something like vertical farming. But this, what you're talking about makes so much more sense to me. And it's like unbelievably exactly what we need.
Mhm.
And I kind of already have scoped out a location even. And this location would be excellent to put at the end of this big, like it's a 7-bay building, okay?
Okay.
But at the end of it, we were thinking of putting the EPL, the Earth Power Lodge,
Okay.
and by Michael Smith. And basically it's a total like 100% cyclic machine. It's called a dragon or whatever, that you feed anything organic in it, becomes biochar. That biochar is what you use to have the re-enhance the soil with like the good stuff, right? So
Right. Yeah.
but
So-
yeah, I would like, so I kind of rambled a little bit, but do you have
Biochar is great.
contacts in each one? So in
No,
each province?
so right now our head office is in London, Ontario, and there's myself in the Kingston area, and we have a couple of associates in BC that are just getting their legs up underneath them, et cetera, and we'll be working in that area. But I think, if we have people, what would happen is we want to use local labor. We're not trying to come in with a crew. That's not our job. These structures that we use are made of reinforced polymer fiberglass. Okay, they're light enough that they could nest into each other and fit into a small plane to fly out to a remote location. So we're not trying to, build a regular kind of structure. And to put this together, all we need is two 12-foot ladders and some wrenches and local people. We want to hire local people. We don't want to come in and take over. So you need to have some people within the community that have the skill set that can get the permits. Now it is agricultural, so your permitting is quite easy. Nobody's living in these structures, though they are hurricane proof and they're fireproof, which is fireproof really important right now. We know that from testing that the wind just goes right over top. It'll just burn grasses over the top and not change the temperature inside of the structure whatsoever. So these are meant to be for local people to put together and to run, period. We provide everything we need to kind of fly in, do it, and get out. Give you the training and support that you need.
Every Friday morning, I go into meditation and I ask, okay, what are we going to talk about today? And I got microgreens because I was at Kimberly's last night, and I thought this would just be a great segue. And I love where the conversation has guided us so divinely, and we're definitely meant to connect with you. So I look forward to having you on very soon. I have your phone number here, so I'll be contacting you, and we'll set a time for a Friday at noon Mountain Standard Time to be here. And yeah, it'd be awesome. Thank you. Thank you everyone for your brilliant minds, your big hearts. I am so grateful for all of you for being here, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I have learned so much. I trust everyone else has as well. And I am so excited about the future that we're creating together. Thank you again, everyone. Have an awesome weekend.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.